what do you think? Like, what do you think about Dan Mullen as a coach, pros and cons? Just overall, if he was the head coach of Arkansas, how would you feel? Where would your concerns be? Everything like that.
Dan Mullen, always competitive, whether it's on the gridiron or in the Inside Arkansas polls. It's crazy how that works, man. Okay, is Dan Mullen my top choice? No. Can Arkansas do better? I think so, but let's see what this coaching carousel looks like in a few weeks, because things might get crazy here. Can Arkansas do worse? They literally have with their last couple hires here. You know what I'm saying? So here's what I know about Dan Mullen. He would take your job, no hesitation, whether he, said otherwise at a UNLV press conference or not. I know that he had a football program that I personally view as harder to succeed at, or lower on the totem pole or whatever, to Arkansas at number 1 in the country during his days over in Starkville. He got off to a hell of a start at Florida, but then they had Shoegate and the Darth Vader thing, and that derailed him. That's too much for any man. You know what I mean? But hell, he's already, bowl eligible and undefeated at UNLV. Would he win a national championship at Arkansas? Probably not. But give me the short list of guys who we could, hire and say, yep, that's going to happen. So to me, like, would Dan Mullen maybe raise and stabilize Arkansas's floor? I think so. He's 109-61 overall with his record. Most of that damage was done as a head coach in the SEC. And I don't know that there's a real sound argument against Dan Mullen being a good coach. Like, I think he is. I know one of the big knocks on him towards the end at Florida was, well, he doesn't want to recruit, or he stopped recruiting. He doesn't like to recruit. We all remember that presser comment that went viral and got him in a bunch of trouble. I have good news for you guys. You don't have to recruit anymore. All you got to do is give a kid an NIL check and tell him that you're in the SEC. So if Dan Mullen gets financial backing and support, he's going to be a good coach that has a good roster. And if not, to me, it wouldn't matter if Nick Saban was your head coach. You're capping your ceiling for yourself. So if they hired Dan Mullen today with all the other available options out there, I would not be upset about it. I wouldn't be picketing, but I'd probably look at it with one eyebrow up, going, is that the best they could do? But seeing this coaching carousel take shape and everything, and if the dominoes fell to where Dan Mullen was ultimately your choice, I just think Arkansas could do a hell of a lot worse, personally.
Yeah, I think that was very sound, Curtis, of laying it out there, where I think there's a lot of stability with Dan Mullen. I mean, you look at his career. I mean, he's coached over a decade in the SEC, never had a year where he won less than 6 games. Actually, that's a lie. His first year at Mississippi State and his final year at Florida, he was 5-6 in those seasons. And so Florida, they fired him before the final game of the year, of course. There's a lot, so basically that's what I know is that's your floor, is being a 5-7, 6-6 team, which I think Arkansas fans, they've had a lot of years worse than that, should probably be okay with that. The question you have to ask yourself is, why did it not work at Florida? And you mentioned the recruiting. I think the recruiting is a huge aspect of this in terms of roster building. There would be a lot of questions of, like, could Dan Mullen really recruit a high-level roster at Arkansas if he really struggled to do it in his final years at Florida? And I think also defensively, of course, Dan Mullen, an offensive guy, X's and O's, really good at quarterback development. So those are the questions I would have going into it, but those are not hard to answer. You get a good defensive coordinator, you bring in a recruiting guy that's going to make everything work, and maybe you give him a ton of NIL money. Those are answers you can get to some of those questions, but those would be the questions I'd have. But I'm with you, Curtis, that it would be a move that I think this fan base, it'd be tough to sell this as like the awesomest thing ever, but you could do a whole lot worse, and there would be a lot of stability with Dan Mullen. I also would be interested to hear from him and say, hey, you spent 1 year not coaching, or maybe it was 2 years there where you were completely out of the game and were broadcasting a little bit. Now you get back into it with UNLV. What did you learn in your time off? What's different about you now? How would you attack your third go around in the SEC? But I'm with you that I look at his tenure at Mississippi State and Florida, and there's some ups and there's some downs, but I see that and I'm like, man, I think there's actually something you could find there of a real case to make Dan Mullen your.
Yeah, no, I see. That's the thing is I feel like there's a lot of candidates that we all like, or at least that we wouldn't mind. And just to kind of do a little Wikipedia page reading of Dan Mullen, he's 53 years old. So all of you that are talking about geriatric coaches and old people, it's like, hell, he's 53. So he's not in his 60s. So that would be different. Of course, he was, at Wagner, Columbia, Syracuse, a few places. He was a GA at Notre Dame. But then going to Bowling Green, who's the quarterback coach there from 01 to 02. But it was really when he was at Utah as the quarterback coach in 03 and 04, because he was there with Urban Meyer. Then he came over with Urban Meyer from 05 to 08 at Florida, which, of course, we know that those that little stretch there, Florida had 2 national championships. Tim Tebow. They also recruited Cam Newton. He was there at Florida, but obviously didn't stay there and ended up going and transferring out because of Tim Tebow. And then he was at Mississippi State, which I'll be honest, guys, I was shocked even during that stretch how long he stayed at Mississippi State. He was there for 8 years. I mean, that was incredible.
Great.
And it was honestly during the time in the stretch when the SEC was probably at its peak when it came to competitiveness, when it came to the toughness, especially in the SEC West, because I was looking at, he got there in 09. And if you think about it, like 09, 10, 11, 12, just that little stretch right there, you're talking about when, of course, Arkansas with Bobby Petrino was doing really good and had some success there. But you think about Les Miles at LSU, constantly having great season. You had Nick Saban at Alabama. You had you had Georgia out of the East with Mark Richt. You had Steve Spurrier at South Carolina, James Franklin at Vanderbilt, mind you. And you had, I guess, Gene Chizik at Auburn, which they won a championship with Cam Newton. So the point is, like, they had a lot of success. It was really a highly regarded conference through that stretch. And of course, his best year coming in 2014, they had the number 1 team in the country for a while. Dak Prescott was there. And it's still, I'll never forget it, guys, the very first ever college football playoff rankings that came out had Mississippi State at number 1. And everyone was like, just like we all anticipated, it worked out. But either way, he had success there. He went to Florida, had 2 10-win, 11-win seasons. And then he goes 8-4 in the COVID season. And then he's fired after going 5-6 in Florida in 2021. Also 7-3 in bowl games. So for those of you that care about bowl games, he's 7-3 there. And now he's sitting undefeated as the UNLV head coach, 6-0, taking over after Barry Odom. So again, like you mentioned his record, Curtis, you mentioned, him being at Mississippi State, being able to win maybe with less, as they always say. But, I guess maybe the question would be is when he left Florida, it was in 2021, and that was just right when NIL and portal stuff started becoming a thing. So I guess the question would be, could he succeed in a high level? Because we haven't seen much of it other than this year at UNLV, but could he succeed with that NIL, the current landscape, and how everything's going on with college football would be the question.
That's it, man. Yeah. And that's up to, well, the answer to that question is yes. You give anybody the right amount of funds and they can put together a roster that's talented enough to go win football games. You have a clue of what you're doing there. And I think he's a pretty decent coach. So, how would the boosters or the donors feel about that? Like, would they front the same amount of money for him that they were allegedly trying to come up with for Rhett Lashley, or that, some of the faction would for Bobby or whoever else, home run hire? That would be the difference to me, because it seems like a hell of a recruiting pitch, right? Like, hey, SEC, a ton of NIL, and my wife will make out with you. Like, that's, it's just kind of where you're at with this. I mean, why the hell would you not sign to come play for that? You know what I mean? But no, in all honesty, I do. I think Arkansas could do a lot worse. And I saw OKC Hogg, talking about the, well, if he can't win consistently at Florida, and I know, listen, I respect the Alex Golish movement from him. And I think he's a hell of a coach, up and comer too. But I'm just saying, like, he was 29-9 in his first 3 years there. You know what I mean? Like, he actually kind of did a hell of a job, and it got, sideways on him or whatever. But this is another guy who's, he's proven it on multiple fronts to me. And do you feel like you could do better? Are you going to point to his record against top 25 opponents? Everybody loves to do that nowadays. And I'm still waiting for somebody to give me the list of the guys who are available, realistic candidates that have played more than like 2 that you could get. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like I don't hate the Dan Mullen idea at all, personally.
I saw the same comment, Curtis, that said if he couldn't win consistently at Florida, and I just say that's not how the Florida tenure went down. He completed 3 seasons at Florida. In those 3 seasons, his SEC record was 19-8, let alone his actual record where they dominated everyone else. SEC record was 19-8. And then in his final year, they go 2-6, and that's when he gets fired. But I mean, we're talking about a guy that, like we said, wins everywhere he goes. And I think the thing that intrigues me about Mullen is that he's proven throughout his career that, schematically speaking, he can take a group that is not super talented and have them compete with teams that are more talented than them. And by the way, I know that at Arkansas, we have this notion that, hey, we want to get someone who's going to come in and bring a ton of money and is going to bring in the best roster possible. And of course, that's what you want. You would love to see that. But realistically, is Arkansas going to randomly just become a top 5 talent team in the SEC? Probably not. So I think there's a lot of value in having a coach who has proven he can win with less.
Yeah, I think so too. And in fact, there's another thing I want to bring up about this, since we're speaking on Dan Mullen here in a second. But I want to remind everybody that the Eye Center of Northwest Arkansas is one of our great new sponsors here on Inside Arkansas Live, as well as Pod at the Palace. And we know that vision is pretty important. Last time I checked, you want to make sure that your vision is on the next level and staying there at the next level, because if you can't see, it just really impacts your life and impacts not only yourself, but also the family and the friends and the people around you. But luckily for you, they are able to perform cataract surgery even before the end of 2025. So it's going to make your holiday season that much more fun and that much more enjoyable when you can actually see. Also, refractive surgery for patients struggling with readers, with glasses, or contacts. They have surgery options for everyone, and they have availability right now. They have a new provider, Dr. Rebecca Brown. She does a great job. She can help out with all of that, as well as doing Botox, filler, and IPL with their aesthetics provider, Olivia Risch. So again, they do it all, and they're going to make sure that you get the care that you need and make sure that vision is on point so you can start living your best life with the Eye Center of Northwest Arkansas. So schedule an appointment today at 479-442-2020. That's 479-442-2020. You can also check out their website at eyecenternwa.com for more info. It's the Eye Center of Northwest Arkansas. So guys, I'm curious, since we're talking about Dan Mullen, it's hard to tell, but it just prediction-wise and everything, like what would be a legitimate ceiling, I guess, for you if Dan Mullen was the head coach? Because that's kind of what people may bring up, whether it's with Petrino, be like, oh, we've seen the best of him and everything. But if Dan Mullen was the guy, I mean, what would be reasonable? And we're going to assume too that he has the financial support and everything. But what would you guys feel like would be a reasonable expectation ceiling type of situation for Dan Mullen if he was the Arkansas coach?
I would hope that it would match what I hope the reasonable expectations and ceilings are, regardless of who they bring in here, which is we're not that greedy, right? Like, can we get to that consistently? Hey, 8 wins a year type of thing, and then every 3, whatever, you have one of those where you pop off and you get double-digit wins. Because if you do that, then you're automatically in the conversation for the college football playoff. Once you get there, it's not exactly like the NCAA tournament, but all bets are off. You get in and then see what happens. But that would be my expectation: is raise the standard a little bit of where the program is actually at versus where the fan base wants it to be at. And based on his track record in the SEC, and I know it's a different era and everything, but seems like he would have a decent amount of traction towards doing that. So I would be okay with that. But that's where I'm at. Like I'm not looking for Arkansas to hire anybody and immediately you are 10 plus wins every single year, top of the polls, getting the buys in the college football playoff. I'm trying to be realistic here. But can we quit with the 4-win nonsense? Can we get off of this 6-6 business? Win 8 most years, slip up there and get double digits a few times, and just get us into that college football playoff. Let's get a taste, man. That's all I want is a taste.
Yeah, I know the circumstances are a little bit different and it's a different era of college football, but I basically look at Dan Mullen's Mississippi State record and I see that and I'm like, okay, that should be like kind of your basis of you're winning 7 games consistently. You get 8-4 here. Then, it's rebuilding. You go 6-6. All right, now we're going 9-3. But for me with Dan Mullen, you mentioned the ceiling, John. I think the ceiling with Dan Mullen is going to be determined by what quarterback he brings in and what quarterbacks he's able to recruit. Because, I mean, this is a guy that coached, brought it, was around the Tim Tebow era, was around the Cam Newton era, was around some really talented quarterbacks throughout his career. Coach Dak Prescott at Mississippi State, and you saw his best years at Mississippi State were when he had Dak Prescott, when he had the quarterback that he wanted. So that's really, you mentioned, Curtis, that stability, going 7-5, 8-4 consistently. Then now maybe there's one year 4, you get your quarterback and you've got your guy, and now he's a senior and you can really make a run at it. That's kind of where I think what the ceiling would be determined by. But I would love for that bottom line to just be a lot higher, of 7-5 being like a ho-hum year for Arkansas.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I was going to say, Andrew, is like if the Mississippi State thing, which I know people will be like, oh, you want to do better than that. But I mean, again, he went 33-39 in those games in the SEC. And I don't know, maybe it's hard, it's hard to predict what's going to, even college football in the SEC is going to look like here in a couple of years. But, with the schedule and no longer having it to where it's a divisional thing, and it just makes me wonder, like maybe he could exceed that from Mississippi State. Because again, he was in the West when it was at its peak, man. He was having to go against Nick Saban every year. He was having to go against really good coaches consistently. I don't remember who the permanent East opponent was for Mississippi State during that time, but either way, maybe a Kentucky. But still, it was like now with the schedule kind of churning out different opponents every year. At Arkansas, we know they play Texas, LSU, and Missouri every year. But maybe it's nice not having to go up against a Georgia or a Florida as consistently, or Tennessee as consistently as that. So maybe that would open up for them. Maybe that would be the case. But I just think that we have to assume, because that's another thing too. I know people will bring it up when it comes to coaches. Well, are they going to have the support? Are they going to have the financial? That's something that we don't know. So we just have to, when we're going to do these discussions, we're just going to assume that they are being fully supported. Because that's, I feel like, the only game that you can really play, and being able to know exactly where you're at. But also another thing real quick, guys, because Google never lies, or at least Google AI. Someone asked about the top 25 records, like what they did against them. Did a quick Google search. Dan Mullen is 12-41 against top 25 opponents. 12-41. Bobby Petrino is 15-32 against top 25 opponents. Now, again, I just did a quick Google search, and that's what the AI told me. So I'm sure somebody will get mad because it's wrong. But if you wanted to know about high-level competition and how well they do, there's your win-loss record. So
most all of his losses came against top 25 teams.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah.
By the way,
if you want to spin it,
I love when people find out like these records and they always cite them as bad things, which like obviously like, you read it 15-32 sounds like a bad record, but it's like, is there anybody in the country outside of like Kirby Smart who has a good record against top 25 or top 10 or top 5, wherever you want to stop it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, who would you guys, obviously Kirby Smart's a great one, but like, who would you guys like, just like for a very good coach, like a very good coach, like what coach would you think of, as far as just curious of what their top 25 record would be? Like a Dabo, or like a, something like that. It's because Kirby Smart obviously is very good because he's 38-12. But it's not too bad. But like Dabo against top 25 team, he's 40-27, so he's had a lot of opportunities there.
I have to make an announcement.
What's up?
Because I can already tell the way this is trending. Right now, we are doing a Dan Mullen conversation, and the chat is doing everything but a Dan Mullen conversation. It's like, oh, well, so you think Dan Mullen's better than so-and-so? Wait, so you think he's better than James Franklin? It's like, dude, we're going to do this one at a time. We're going to talk about all these coaches. We're just talking about Dan Mullen. We're not saying he's the number one coach. We're not saying he's better than anybody else. We're just doing a Dan Mullen conversation. And then we're going to do a goalish conversation. And then we're going to do a Summerall conversation. Like, just try and have the conversation we're having. Quit trying to have a separate conversation.
We're gonna open the phone lines for OKC Hog when we do the goalish conversation.
Oh man, like that's be the only time, and he's the only one that can call in. That's all it's going to be. But no, I think, again, making the case for Dan Mullen, I think it would be good. I think we would all be in agreement. Like, if they hire Dan Mullen, I don't want to speak for all three of us because you guys may disagree, but I think we'd all be happy. It's like, hey, it's pretty solid. Let's see where it goes. I know everyone's gonna be like, well, what about the staff? Who would he hire? I have no clue who he would end up hiring. Maybe brings in Urban Meyer as an advisor or something. Do something like that. Make it crazy. But either way, I think it'd be good. He's always had really good quarterback play, which is nice. And again, I think they could do a lot worse. And speaking of that, as far as our Alumni Hall question of the day, presented by Alumni Hall, it's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. We're going to be there next Friday, by the way, folks. So come on out and see us. You can go and check out their website, though, because I know that a lot of you Razorback fans, you don't live in the Northwest Arkansas area. You don't get to come down very often, but that's okay. Go ahead and have the greatest Razorback apparel shipped directly to your door. Just go to insidearkansas.com/alumni hall, and you'll see all the different apparel items that you can choose from, whether it's Johnny O, they got Peter Millar online. They also have, of course, Columbia. They have Southern Tide. They have jerseys. They have hats. They legit have everything you could possibly want for your Razorback fandom. And with basketball season coming up, I know they used to do the must polos. You probably can't get the Calipari suits there at Alumni Hall. But hey, you can always have your Razorback basketball jerseys that are going to be in stock here soon as well. So check it out. It's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. Go online to insidearkansas.com/alumni hall. You can scan that QR code and use that code HOGSBY20 for 20% off your purchase with Alumni Hall. So simply ask the question, guys, for today. It's like, would you like to have Dan Mullen as your next head coach? Would you be good with it? And as of right now, this very accurate polling, exactly 2/3, 66.7% say yes, they would be good with Dan Mullen. 33.3% say no, And I'm sure, because I don't want to speak for everybody who said no, because I don't know, but I feel like those people that voted no are probably because they have somebody that they want more, and it has to be that person. But I think it's a pretty good ratio and percentage, though, if you get 2/3 of the vote at least saying that it would be good to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I would be happier than most Hog fans, I think. Like, I think generally I'm more pro Dan Mullen than most, but I'm kind of in that same boat of like there's guys I would probably prefer, and there's guys I'd maybe be more excited about and more intrigued by. But I would be worried how we would sell this to the fan base as like this groundbreaking move, but we'd find a way to do it.